This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
All right, and now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Walter Carter. Let me give you some background on Walter. He's from Richmond, Virginia, played his college ball at Florida State, where he was a part of Bobby Bowden's first team back at Florida State, so they came in together. He was a 10th-round draft pick in 1980 by the Oakland Raiders, played in the league from 86 to 91 for the Raiders, Jets, and Bucks. He also played in the USFL for the Tampa Bay Bandits, and we are honored to have him with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Good evening, Walter. Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good evening, Walter. Thank you for having me. Good to listen in for a little while there, and it's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you guys. I don't have the resume of your former guests, but we all played the game we love.
Indeed. So, Walter, I wanted to start our time with you by going back to your time at Florida State. So, initially, how does a kid from Richmond, Virginia, end up playing his college ball at FSU?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I guess I got really lucky on that one. But remember, Bobby Bowden was coaching and had done really well at West Virginia. So the coach that coached the defensive line, George Henshaw, who had a fantastic career, ended up in the NFL, was recruiting me, and I really liked him. And I really liked the Coach Bowden and what we were doing. I just was apprehensive about West Virginia. I kind of had grandparents in West Virginia, and every time I visited, nothing against West Virginia, I just felt that it was just not my idea of college. And so I was kind of torn between, where am I going to go? And, but I really liked this coach. And at the time, I had some grade issues, and I remember that Coach George Henshaw and I got together with the guidance counselor, and we discussed ways for me to be at least accepted into the school. And a lot of the bigger schools that had been recruiting me, Ohio State at that time was big time, and a lot of those guys kind of backed off because they didn't know if I was actually, literally make the grade. Football-wise, I did, but, so they started kind of pushing me toward maybe junior college and some of those things. And I always felt that, there was something out there, but I really couldn't get my finger on it. And I get this call from Bowden and George Henshaw that they were leaving West Virginia, and they still wanted to recruit me, and they were taking a job in Florida State. Well, for me, out of Virginia, you might as well say Miami Beach. I just heard the word Florida, and I go, okay, I'm interested. And they said, would you visit? I go, sure, I'd take a visit to Florida, and that's all I could think of. And so, it was like a dream come true, and it was just something that was the opportunity came in his first year. I visited, and I came home, and I told my folks, I said, I'm going to go to Florida State. And they go, what? Where did you come up with that? At the time, that was a big change. They said all these schools in North Carolina, South Carolina, even West Virginia, and all of a sudden you're going all the way down to Florida. He goes, where'd that come from? I said, I don't know. I know that coach is interested in me. He's always been interested in me. It's a brand new opportunity. And the rest is history. His first year was my first year. My connection was his connection from West Virginia down to Florida State. Thinking about the field, I thought that new coach, new program. Then I did some research, and I realized that there weren't a lot of palm trees, if any palm trees in Tallahassee, and that was a big old state. And I go, I never heard of Tallahassee or Florida State. And I guess, I've always said that Bowden being the, war historian that he is, that, he was the general, and a general has to have some, troops. And I think I just got assigned to his military or his army of players, and I got to play real early because, again, I think the second game of the season, we got beat by Miami. I still remember it, 47-0. I had O.J. Anderson and everything else, and Bowden came in that locker room, and, he said, I got to play a lot. He said, we won't get embarrassed like this again. I think I played the whole second half, and I was on the field, and of course, the game was over, but I was just glad to be on that field. And that very next week, third game, we were going to Oklahoma, and he said, our program begins now. I'm not going to get embarrassed like that again. And I guess from most part, he never did. And I got my start that Oklahoma game and started pretty much for the next 4 years. And first game I started was Oklahoma, and the last game I started was Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, and we were undefeated. So I think I got it right, but I can't say I just got really lucky and ended up on Bobby Bowden's very first team, and we all know the rest. And 4 years later, he said, if you do what I say and I get 3 more classes like you guys, we'll play for it all. And it happened. He was just, I think, really, biblically assigned to put his footprint on that program. And I was just very fortunate to be one of Bobby's boys.
So, Walter, when you look back at where the program was, right? The few years before Bowden took over, the team was 0-11, 1-10, 3-8. His first year, your first year, you guys were 5-6, and then boom, 10-2. So, did you get a sense of what changed? What did he do that got that you guys in that program from 5-6 to 10-2 in one season?
It was 30 years later, when we all were up at one of these reunions when they brought Bobby back, and and he had a big booster meeting, and the auditorium was full. It was he had stayed away purposely for a few years to let Jimbo, run his own show, and we know what Jimbo's meant to the program. Is just a great decision, coaching, waiting, the whole 9 yards. But Bobby is a very classy man. He has the foresight now, and he had it then. And he saw this changing that happened. And he said at that point, and the guys were there, we looked at each other because we've always felt it. We always knew it because we were a part of it. And one of the guys, they asked him a question, not football player, but one of the boosters. It said, Coach, you've got Heisman trophies, you got, national championship. You had a run like no one else, 14 years in the top 30s. But out of all those teams, we got to ask you, what was your favorite team? And we just kind of, you can't say it, but we kind of felt it. And for the first time, it was verbalized. He says, that's a very difficult question. He said, it's like asking you your favorite kid. He says, you really can't say it, but you know it. He said, but looking back, I got to say my favorite team of all my 30-something years was my 1977 team. And, I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was just validation. It came 30-something years later, but we knew it when you do it. You got to know it when you're in it. And when I give that, when I told you about that night of 47-0, I remember he brought in the entire freshman class. And at that time, I don't know what they do now, but I think you get to recruit 30 guys. So it was 20-something, 30 guys piled into Bowden's office, and he only wanted us. And he gave us this speech, and a lot of people remember the older Bowden, but I remember the fiery Bowden. And he said, men, and he told us, he says, I'll never put a team out there like that. He says, it doesn't matter about the score. I felt that there were some guys on that field that gave up. And he said, they're not my guys. You my guys. You're the beginning of what we're going to do in this program. And, of course, I'm a freshman. I don't know any better. I was just glad to be on the field. I got on the kickoff team, played a lot because we got blown out. And he said, you trust me, men. He said, it's going to start this week because a lot of you guys sitting in here, I'm not going to tell you who, but your coaches will let you know by the time Saturday rolls around. And we had, at that time, Oklahoma was coming up. He said, there's going to be some of you guys that are going to start. And he said, you don't worry about that score. You don't worry about anything because I can assure you, if you do what I say and I get another class like you, I'm responsible for that one, this one, the next one. And by by the time I get me 3 more classes that I recruit like I got you, by the time you get to be a senior, you're going to play for the championship. But I said that story to say that he knew it. He saw it. He just had to build it. So he took a leap of faith against Oklahoma, 3rd game, after going 5-6, after losing. I mean, that was our first year. I'm sorry. I'm jumping. But after losing 47-0, and it was a long road. I started that next week against Oklahoma. It was about 5 or 6 of us. I probably know them because we're all sitting in the front row of our senior pitcher. And just like he said it, man, it was a long, hard journey, believe me. But, from that moment in that office to my final game 4 years later in the Orange Bowl, undefeated. Now, if it was a movie, we would have won the championship and been pulled off like Rudy or something, but we didn't win that game, and we didn't win the first one. But we battled hard, and we fought, and we did all the things that he wanted us to do. And so when you look back at the run he had, what he was saying is that recruiting means everything. I inherited this team, but I got to go out and get the players. So by him starting to reach up into Virginia, he found some talent. Okay, and now look at what they're doing. There's a lot of great players that we get out of areas that are not Florida. Florida's loaded with athletes, but he started to expand the program, the recognition. He wanted the national stage. I don't think you just get things in life. You got to visualize them, and Bowden taught us that. And that's what we got. We got the ability to go out, and we played Oklahoma. I remember the butterflies in the stomach. I looked up. I've never seen so much red in my life. But there's one thing I remembered more than anything. I think we lost, 24-17 or something. It wasn't like we got blown out, and they were like number 1 or 2 in the country. They were like the premier program. And I still remember playing my tail off, doing everything I could, and really being upset about losing that game. But knowing that we didn't get blown out, that was for sure. And what I learned is that Midwestern values and how much football meant out in Oklahoma, they gave us a standing ovation as we left that field because, that's what we need. Even when you lose, but you play that hard and you play that well, then somebody out there is looking at you and respecting you, and that's what Bowden did for us. He told us we belong. It's going to happen. It might not happen overnight, but if you do like I said, I continue to get the guys like you guys, and I'm not talking about athletes only. I got my grades up. I graduated on time. I mean, he recruited character guys. We wore suits back then on the road. We took pride in being men, and he developed that. And he taught us that if you work hard and you know what you want, I'm in the same boat as you guys. I got run out of West Virginia. He wasn't ashamed about it. He thought he had done a great job, and as soon as he started losing, they ran him right out of there. And he knew what it felt like to lose. So when you come 5-6, he did something, but he hadn't done enough. And he did some things at that time frame. We're talking mid-70s. I wasn't really understanding it then, but I do now. It was a big change in football in the South to play as many of us as he did. On that side of the field, there was like, okay, if you're going to put that many guys of that color on that field, you better win. Nobody talks about that, but that was a big change in the way football was being done. It's not it's crazy to talk about it now, but it was the mid-70s. And so he took a chance because he knew I got to get the best athletes and on this field. And at that time, we stayed in school for 4 years. So you got to develop your craft. You got to learn what you could do. And he had to step up there because I think he felt that this was a make it or break it for him. If he came in with a losing record again, who knows what would have happened. But because that season ended up being what it was, it's still 35 years with all the success he's had. He still can say that was my favorite team because that's when he knew He had what it took to be coaching. He knew he had the athletes, and he knew he was going to only get better because we had proven, and he had proven to us that what he was teaching, we were buying it, that we were the players, and it gave us the confidence to carry that into where we are and where that program is today. It was just one of the most gratifying, greatest things that you could ever be a part of, and to witness it and be a part of it from day one, it'll never leave you. It defines you.
Wow, what a great story. Bob, one quick one for Walter before we let him go?
Yeah, quickly, just more about Bowden, Walter. I could talk all day about him. We think about college coaches who are just tuned in with one school. I mean, you talk about Paterno and Bowden. I mean, and you can go to guys like Frank Broyles and Partigian, but those two right there put my indoctrination to Florida State football, Walter. I went to the kickoff classic in the 80s at the Meadowlands, and I'm in the stadium and I'm looking in the parking lot, Walter, and I see about 10 buses pull up, and it's all Florida State fans. Walter, they get out of the bus doing the tomahawk chop, and it was rabid. They enter the building, they keep doing it, and that place rocked. Like I never saw how a team traveled like that to a place a couple thousand miles away almost. It was just incredible. And it had a Bowden signature on that entire program, how big it got over the years. And I wanted to get your opinion on him, more about his coaching. We knew how great a recruiter he was, but how about his in-game managing and things like that, Walter? Was he more of an offensive, defensive guy, and what were some of his great qualities?
Motivation, accountability, but I think for sure he was more of an offensive coach. We had a great defensive coordinator. I know Mickey Andrews is one of the greatest, but in the early years we had a guy named Jack Stanton that ended up coaching for quite a while and in the pros and everything. And Bowden really pretty much, well, I think they nicknamed him the Riverboat Gambler back then. He had all the statue and all that stuff going on and reverses. But his actual on-field was probably more offensive because that was just his nature. But he also knew and respected and appreciated the defensive side of the ball. He had great coaches. Man, did they work us. I'd say we worked twice as hard. We'd come off the practice field, and Bowden was always kind of nice and chummy, and he was a good politician and all that stuff. And he would come out there, and the offense would be already in. They'd already taken their shower. They'd already eaten, and we'd still be out there on that field because Jack was making sure we did everything. And then Bowden would come out there, and he would say, "Let him go, Jack, let him go." Well, we knew good and well he knew what was going on, but he just, always was motivating, and he was quite a bit of a, even in the locker room, he was a politician. He knew who could play football. I remember when I was a freshman, I literally walked around with a frown on my face the whole training camp. I was a take no prisoner type of guy. And the coach, I didn't know if they recognized me or not, if they knew I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and especially Bowden, a guy who really is above it all. He'd get on his, tower up there, and he was more offense, and you don't even know if he still knows your name. And one day I'm in line, and he goes, "Walter, why don't you smile?" He said, I said, "Well, Coach, he said, you can smile around here because you can play football." And that meant everything to me. I was like, that man notices me. He knew that, he didn't tell me to smile. He was just saying something to me to let me know that he had recognized the fact that I could play football. And you can get that from your position coach. You can get that from anybody else that's close to the program. But when you hear it from the man, it let me know that he was paying more attention to what was going on than I thought up in that tower. But all he really on it, as far as his X's and O's and as far as him getting really involved and getting in stances and all that stuff, he was offense. And he also used to tell us all the time, do not worry if we're down. don't you ever worry. You just keep playing football and you keep doing what you're doing because our offense, he used to say it, we can score quick. So you can be down 3 touchdowns, and there were times we were. He said, but bang, 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 we'll be back in this thing. You know how he talked. And so we believed him. So we just kept fighting. And one time I remember one game our senior year, because we went undefeated, and we were down 3 touchdowns, and that clock hit fourth quarter. We were playing in Cincinnati. They had no business beating us. We were out there just kind of going through the motions, and they were jacked up. It was a little small stadium, 35,000 or so, and we were coming into the big time. And so all of a sudden, we down 3 touchdowns on the road. We don't even look like the team that was ranked 9 and all this stuff, and we getting ready to blow it all. And it was like all of a sudden this switch came on, and all we thought about was what Bowden had told us. Bang, bang, we could be back in this thing. So that defense went in there. We shut them down, and I remember the coach saying, you know what, this is like 2 different teams. If you look at these first 3 quarters, you just see 11 guys. They all just doing their job, but there's no emotions. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. We're not scoring. We got this team, and all of a sudden it's like Cinderella. That clock hit fourth quarter, and we got to get. And all of a sudden it's like a whole new team. They were the same numbers, the same players, but that sense of urgency, that Bowden bang bang came into play. You stop him, we're going to score. Bam, he scored. He says, you go do it again. We do it again. We're going to score. Bang, he scored. And then the next thing you know, he said, wow, whatever he been saying, it's true. Bang, bang, we can get right back in this thing. And we walked out of there with a win. And, and so you can't help. You can believe him or you can live it. I believed him and I lived it. He did everything he said he was going to do. We did what he expected us to do, and he continued that throughout his entire career. And then the other thing, I'm just, to make a change from what you're talking about, Joe Paterno and any of the great coaches out there, you see if any of them ever got it right. How long does it take you to find the right guy after you lose a guy like Bowden? Or look at Penn State, look at Texas, look at all these schools. Nobody found that replacement. I mean, you don't hit that home run. Everybody tried coaching Waiting. Florida State got it right. Jimbo was the perfect guy for the perfect situation. It took a classy man like Bowden to understand what it takes to turn the keys over, and he got the right guy, and we still winning to this day. It's just a tribute again to his legacy, because when he built it right, and that's why they're still there.
Wow, what great stories, Walter. It's been fantastic just listening to you share your memories and share your stories. I wish we had more time, to hear more of them. We hope you'll come back sometime and share more of your thoughts, more of your insights. We know you got a lot of other things going on. We'd love to have you come back again real soon. We hope you will.
I think you can tell. You call me, I'll talk. So just let me know. I enjoy it a lot.
Great. That's great stuff.
Okay,
Walter.
guys.
Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
All right,
Thank
Walter.
you.
Take care. All the best to you and your family.
You too. Thank you, sir.
That is former Florida State defensive end, and he played some time in the NFL with the Bucks, and then in the USFL with the Tampa Bay Bandits, also some time with the Raiders. But Walter Carter, what great stories, Bob. I love the enthusiasm and the passion in his voice, and to hear his stories. That's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, it gives you goosebumps if you grew up watching the Florida State and when you think about it, Chris, I mean, if you're from the East, it was Penn State. South, it was Florida State. As far as having godlike figures at the helm, and to see what those guys did with 2 programs, it's just mind-boggling how they continue to do what they do today because of those 2 guys. It's just amazing, and we can go on all day about the Florida State program, and just blew my mind when they came up to here to New Jersey that day, and that's when I first realized this is not just college football, it's big business, and it's been like that since.